Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our PropTech and Location Data event, Exploration of the Possible and Innovation Support. I'm just about to start my presentation, and one moment. Everyone see that okay, hopefully. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Fiona MacDonald and I am an Innovation Manager at Construction Scotland Innovation Centre. Before we get underway, I'd just like to highlight some housekeeping points to help with the webinar running as smoothly as possible. Firstly, the session is being recorded today and presentations will be available following the webinar. And secondly, all participants will be on mute during the webinar, so I do encourage you to please ask questions throughout, and please do so by clicking on the questions section within your control panel. Type in your question and press send. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can during the Q&A session at the end of the presentations, and please know that your feedback and opinions are extremely important to us, so we will note each and every question, and if we don't have time to answer them all today, we'll endeavour to do so or incorporate them into future presentations and follow up accordingly. So I appreciate some of you may not be aware of what we do here at Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, and therefore we wanted to take a couple of minutes to outline some of the work that we undertake and really how this collaboration with a number of organisations to make today's event happen developed. So today we have 6 organisations driving this event: Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, Scottish Development International, European Space Agency, Enterprise Europe Network and Location Data Scotland and CENSIS. 6 organisations, very much so one mindset. We all see innovation as the change that's going to unlock new value, and relative to the built environment, we felt that PropTech was a developing theme of activity that we wanted to build on, and we wanted to really explore how we could incorporate location data as much as possible into this realm. So some of the work that we do here at CSIC, we cover 4 core themes of activity: digital transformation, advanced manufacturing, building sustainably and culture change. And really what we want to home in on here today is the digital transformation, and really want to understand how we can support industry embrace digital and data benefits, and appreciating where government is steering core focus in relation to net zero carbon. We really want to understand what the impact may be from a delivery point of view to support the built environment, deliver it in a measured and informed way. And we feel that PropTech and location data falls into this category perfectly. In terms of CSIC, very much so, a number of our activity streams really are dependent on this connected ecosystem that we have in play. Just like our sister innovation centres, we sit in the middle of industry, the public sector and academia, and it's for us to link these organisations together. And that's really how this support collaboration came to be today, appreciating that we all have an invested interest in supporting industry develop innovation, but also appreciating that we have tools to support your projects at different stages of the life cycle, which my colleagues will touch on in a moment. So in terms of today's agenda, as I noted, I'm Fiona MacDonald from CSIC. I'll be passing over to my colleague at the European Space Agency, Kenneth Gordon, to really talk about some of the support that's available, not just from within ESA, but within the other organisations we're working with to deliver today's event. And then we'll be passing you over to the safe and experienced hands of our industry leaders, really to explore their journeys and the impact, but also the opportunities and the challenges that they face in relation to the partnering of PropTech and location data. So we have Simens from IES, we have Gordon Mitchell from KFM, Falk Lyle from Utopia, Simon Tricker from Urban Tide. We'll finish the presentations with a Q&A session. Some of the questions we've already received from participants, so thank you for sending them on. And as I said, we will follow up after the event to seek your feedback and share some of the content from today's presentations. And it's at that stage I'll pass you over to my colleague Kenneth Gordon from the European Space Agency, really to look at some of the support they have available and the relationship between the support organisations that are represented here today and the support that we can deliver to industry to make things happen. Over to you, Kenneth.
Thank you, Fiona. Right, let's get the slides going. Do we have slide share? as we wait for the internet to catch up from rural Glasgow. Does any, is that showing on the screen somewhere? Can someone? Oh, there we go. Is that it? Good.
Yeah.
Hello. My name is. Thank you.
No.
My name is Ken Gordon. I'm the European Space Agency Space Solutions Regional Ambassador for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Nice to meet you all. There's a team of 7 covering the whole of the UK, and we're here to help organisations understand and apply for funding. European Space Agency is the largest space agency in the world. It supports both European startups, SMEs, to develop new products and services that use space technology. We have funding, business and technical support to help your businesses work with ESA and take advantage of the assets that you and I have paid for through our taxes. Talking about taxes on a Wednesday. So far, we've invested 200 million euros in more than 500 businesses and launched more than 300 projects. And we cover 3 different types of service. Technology brokerage, which is about connecting your businesses with the bits of ESA that you want to connect with, translating space technology into other industries. Business incubation for startups, and if you're in Scotland, you'll know there's a business incubation centre at the Hague Centre. And also, this is the bit that I get involved in, or our ambassador team to do. We help people understand and apply for the funding that's available to develop new products and services that solve problems using space technology. This slide set, as Fiona has said, will be shared, so check all this out at your leisure. The key web address at the bottom right there is where you'll find most of the info, and if you want to have a chat, let me know. The funding is available in 2 formats, competitions and open calls. Generally, both are funded at 50% of your costs. I won't go through the details are all here. The open call is available all of the time for any project, and our funding is a procurement contract, not a grant. And the open call is by far the most popular route for applications. We support organizations in non-space sectors. So if you're making bagels and you have a super idea to solve a bagel problem using space tech, let's talk. Your innovation must solve a problem for which there's a market demand, and it is that simple. We've supported several property-related projects in recent times, so if you have an idea, get in touch. Now let's. SDI. SDI has been supporting Scottish companies in connecting and collaborating internationally for many years. Their network of international offices and Global Scot network, market research, and their knowledge of removing trade barriers is second to none. SDI are currently looking into connecting with construction PropTech international organisations and companies that potentially Scottish companies could connect with. And they would like to hear about what other Scottish companies are working in this property technology environment to help get a better picture of what Scotland's capabilities are for their international network. Enterprise Europe Network is in more than 60 countries, and it's focused on international horizon scanning, application support for all sorts of funding, including Innovate UK and Horizon Europe, and building international partnerships through business-to-business events. Location Data Scotland is a brand new, shiny, out-of-the-box network. It aims to establish an inclusive geospatial community across Scotland to unlock the value in location data. I found this a fantastic super mixture of people and companies, and the point is that we're all getting together to collaborate, to share ideas across academia, the public sector, and the third sector, driving innovation and unlocking skills. Last but not least, our innovation centres, CENSIS and CSIC, who are they? Who can help you access academic funding and leverage their network to support your business through matchmaking, consultancy, and acting as an innovation catalyst. And representatives from all of these organisations are in this meeting, so make sure you have your questions ready at the end. And I'm going to hand back to Fiona.
Bear with me, and I'll just share my screen, please, if that's all right, Danielle. There we go. Can everyone see that okay?
Yeah,
So yes, We're just moving on to the industry representation part of today's event, and very much so want to understand their journey when it comes to PropTech and the possibilities when we apply location data to their varying technology and business models. So first off, we have Simeon from IES, followed by Gordon Mitchell of KFM, Falk of Utopia, and Simon of Urban Tide. So at this stage, I'd like to pass on to Simeon, please, at IES. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Just waiting for the screen. Can I get a confirmation that you can see my presentation?
Yep, can see that, thank you.
Great. So my name is Simon Presentation, and I'm a Senior Innovation Manager for IES. And just a few words about who we are. We are an SME headquartered in Glasgow, but we are still a multinational company, and we are operating around the world. Our main business operation is software development for modeling and simulation buildings and communities. And for more than 25 years, engineering and architecture companies have been using our tools to model and simulate buildings, especially during the design stage and for compliance with energy regulations. But the last few years, we have introduced in the market a lot of different other tools that now extend our scope of operations from the design stage to the operational phase of buildings as well. And we are moving also from individual buildings into a portfolio of buildings and communities. And those tools have been developed through our intensive participation in collaborative R&D projects. So in IES, we would like to see ourselves as positioned in the intersection between construction tech, climate tech, and PropTech. So construction tech, because still our tools are being used around the world during the design stage. Climate tech, because what we are mainly doing is energy efficiency. Our tools are being used to evaluate and assess energy efficiency options and investments, and also renewable energy sources, assessment of renewable energy sources, both on buildings and within communities. And of course, having moved the last few years into the operational phase of buildings, we are part of PropTech because, again, our tools are crucial, we think, into the optimization of the performance of smart and sustainable buildings. So as I've said, we now have a multitude of tools in the market, and those tools are, we brand them as the ICL Digital Twin, ICL standing from Intelligent Communities Life Cycle. And those tools are using a fusion of both physics-based and data-based modeling and simulation of buildings and communities. Those tools can be worked individually, but also in collaboration and integrated. And that suite of new tools, that new technology, allow us and our clients, of course, to deliver a multitude of new services to the built environment. So just to try to demonstrate how we see our competitive advantage right now. So just few years ago in the built environment, usually what we have is the different HVAC systems and all the other on-site systems, be it RES or anything else, the sensors and meters embedded in those systems or located within the rooms of buildings, and then you have the off-site information like weather. And you were using that type of data to actually regulate the operation and the performance of your technical building systems. Now, the last few years, of course, with the proliferation of IoT sensors and the other data coming into the built environment, there is a revolution with a lot of companies offering artificial intelligence for database modeling that can optimize, not only regulate technical building systems. So what we are doing as a further step from that approach is to use those different types of data sources along with artificial intelligence to calibrate our physics-based dynamic building simulation models. And in order to do that calibration for us, location-specific data is of huge importance. And we would like the more the finer the resolution of the location-specific data it is, the easier it is for us, and the more accurate it is the calibration of our own physics-based models. Now, having a calibrated physics-based model allow us to generate down the line a wealth of new information, curated information. We call that approach virtual or proxy sensors. So with our physics-based model, we can actually calculate and meter variables that we can either not monitor at all, or you will otherwise require a very expensive monitoring infrastructure. So that approach allows us to have a more holistic optimization of the building itself and its systems. So that's just a glimpse of the different R&D projects that we are currently involved from our portfolio of projects. I'm not going to stay a lot on that slide. All those projects are being described in our website. Just going to mention that in principle, we have 4 main categories of research projects that we are active in. It's, of course, the design of new buildings and the renovation of existing buildings, the intelligent communities and integrated master planning, optimization of buildings operation, and finally, development and deployment of full-blown digital twins. And again, I'm going to go through that slide very quickly. You can see different types of activities that we are undertaking. We are undertaking in the new, let's say, headings of research area for us: the intelligent communities, the integrated master planning, and the digital twins. So I'm just going to spend a little bit more time on a particular project, that is the eDigital Life. That is a research project that is being funded by Innovate UK, and it's a partnership between ourselves, the University of Glasgow, Sciencescope, the construction company Multiplex, and the HLM architects. And the project is also supported by Vodafone, providing their innovation lab located within the University of Glasgow for the development and testing of narrow-band IoT sensors for the built environment. So what we want to do in this project is to revisit the whole modeling process for new buildings. As I said earlier, our tools have been used even from the conceptual and the design phase of a building to assess different design options and to optimize the design of a building, and then further down the line for energy compliance or certification and rating of the new building. And as soon as that process is done, pretty much the model is done. It's one-off job, and it remains dormant. So what we want to do is demonstrate that we can actually exploit more value from that same model. So all we need to do is actually follow a modeling process that anticipates the future monitoring infrastructure either within the building or around the building, all that data, and how that data, even during the construction, can feed into the modeling to evolve the model, update the model as the building is construction. So after the commissioning phase, we can actually have the same model that has been used in the design phase, now having evolved as an as-built model. And that particular model now, we can calibrate it during the first period of its operational phase, and it can become the foundational infrastructure of an operational digital twin for that building. So it has value now with no additional cost to the owners or the users of the building, and is going to be an enabler for a lot of different services for the building during its operational phase. And as I said, an important aspect of that calibration process, of course, is location-specific data, and in the higher resolution, the best it is for us. So this is a slide taken by the European Space Agency website directly. So it pretty much mentions the three different sources that we can have for spaceborne data for the built environment. So we have the SatNav, the satellite Earth observation, the satellite communications. And what I want to say in this slide is that all three of them are actually presenting capabilities that can be of use for the built environment. And just before mentioning the different applications that we are exploring with respect to location-specific data, I want to highlight that usually ourselves as a company, we are not the direct recipients of spaceborne data directly. Usually there is another entity, an intermediate entity, a third-party company that can process that kind of data to deliver them to us in a format that we can utilize. And another thing I want to say is that quite often such data cannot be used directly, but they can be used to calibrate on-site monitoring along with other type of methodologies that can generate data that can be of direct use for the built environment. So moving forward to specific applications for PropTech, the first one is very important for us, neighborhood-specific weather data, and that is because that kind of weather data are very important for the more accurate calibration of our physics-based models. Outdoor comfort and indoor air quality and outdoor air pollution is another thing that is becoming hotter, especially since the pandemic. Land use characteristics and features for climate change adaptation, that is something that we are seeing right now, and we are exploring different research opportunities here with partners on how we can use such information for the real estate market and the insurance market based on the higher frequency of extreme weather events in the future, and how we can design better buildings to mitigate and adapt to such events. with respect to specifically location data, agile construction is another important issue, because the digital infrastructure right now allow us to be more nimble during construction, so optimizing supply chains and logistics. Another thing that is becoming very hot is embodied carbon of materials. So whatever has to do with traceability of materials, construction materials, where those materials came from, how they were processed, where they were processed, and how they have been transported at the construction site is going to be very important. And finally, accurate positioning for third-party services that can be facilitated by building digital twins, and that are any type of services that we cannot even think about them right now, but we can see applications there, because we are going to have powerful tools in the built environment that can integrate the buildings with their surrounding urban infrastructure and urban environment. So one example of that may be e-mobility, how you are sizing and locating shared EV chargers in a community, and then how you operate them based on the location and the mobility of your different EV vehicles. And that's it for me. Thank you very much. And I will be passing over to Gordon Mitchell from KeyFM.
Thanks, Simon. Hopefully you can see my presentation.
Yep, that's up and filled. Thanks, Gordon.
Perfect. Okay, hi everyone. Excited to be here and walk through this changing environment that certainly I'm used to in the day job, if you like. Just to walk through a little bit about ourselves as a business, and then my intent today is to look at some of the already experienced alterations, I guess, to our model, where we've been leveraging either PropTech or these locational capabilities, and really how that's affected enhancements to both our clients and our own operating model. But today I'm talking from my business's point of view in terms of key facilities management and Keystone. We are a international facilities management business with operations directly in over 20 countries. We really look after Fortune 500 multinational estates, so that can be across every continent in the world. And I guess progressively that's needing both consultative services in terms of dealing with the whole digital transformation and everything Simeon was outlining in his presentation, but really how do we take all of that innovation, all of that PropTech, and embed it into the human operational teams, and that's kind of, I think, the recipe for successful and sustainable digital transformation. So that, due to the scale of the portfolios we work with, that tends to bring us into working with a lot of the standards world and having to upskill teams into new ways and approaches to working. So that comes across, I guess, professional bodies, as well as things like ISO and CEN and BSI here in the UK. And to that extent, I personally hold a few roles with some of those organisations as well. So I'll hopefully be able to outline both my industry perspective, but also some of the overlap with the professional world, professional bodies world, in terms of the Institute of Workplace and Facilities Management, where I'm the chair of the Technology Special Interest Group, and in terms of standards as well, and how we kind of conform this whole digital transformation, and in that regard with Technical Committee 267, which is facilities management. I sit as convener with Working Group 6, which again is around technology. So anything looking at that operational phase of the built environment, if we're going to put standards, everything that kind of comes from 19650, which has obviously just been adopted in the UK as part of our BIM framework, through to that operational phase, and really starting to deal with the opportunities that I think location and this digitization brings to that operational part of the built environment, which, as we all know, it contributes around about 80% of the total cost of our built environment. So 4 times typically more spend than design, construction, even destruction, and also has around about the same percentage of creation of things like carbon. So if you look at the operational phase of the built environment, we're talking 32% of the carbon creation on planet Earth. So getting this phase of our built environment right has some real international implications for how we can support the charge to net zero. And then the final part is where we have a slightly different model in our own setup, which is we call Keystone, and that's very much around the digital tool set that sits alongside this operational phase of the built environment. And we do have a few proprietary tools that we use, but really this is about being an agnostic, a sort of best value position to our end clients. So the clientele we work with have lots of legacy systems, so we come in and we can work really with any digital tool, but it's about pulling that into some kind of interoperable ecosystem that's then designed to enable the digital estates into new ways of working, and looking at some of those e-services, as Simeon also pointed out in his slides, where we can, I guess, reimagine our places and spaces to a degree. So if we then look at how, I guess, as a business, we consider how we approach and bring our services, we have kind of 4 tiers of digital maturity, and that would be from the nuts and bolts, the assets, the traditional FM landscape that we've been operating for decades, then moving up into more progressive layers of sophistication and integration, both with the operational team, but even more so, we're seeing being able to actually affect the users of our places and spaces, so enhancing that workplace experience with things like energy optimization, space utilization, but then moving into more direct effects on that population and looking into well-being. And I think certainly in the last little while with the pandemic, where workplace and well-being, I guess, connect, we're now seeing a kind of need to control our places and spaces in ways that we certainly hadn't necessarily had to before everything kicked off. So I think that's showing the diversity as well, as this the approach that we take is very much centric around the organisation, not any specific tool set. So we have to be agile. We have to hopefully not make such radical changes as has been over the past couple of years, but that's where the digital toolkit can really work in harmony with our teams to deliver and can keep delivering the excellence that we obviously want our clients and their workforces to experience. And then that moves into our sort of top tier, which is the emerging space of UN SDGs, starting to look at the community aspect, again, that was mentioned in the previous slide, and how we start to consider an organisation and its place in this whole circular concept, and start to not only hone in and work with the world around a given business, and bear in mind this can be upwards of 100 countries of presence. So how does that brand and that organization start to function in a very, beyond borders, I guess, into a very holistic way of operating, while still keeping it standardized and compliant to all local needs. So that I guess in how that's then applied comes down into an array of kind of direct, maybe easier to consume applications where we can target, particular parts of the operation. And really, in any digital transformation, it's a journey. So being able to take and tune into the requirements of our end client and create that maturity kind of map that allows specific areas to be targeted to either low-hanging fruit, as it were, or critical aspects that then enable other parts of the transformation to be easier adopted or more economically viable. So if I take a move now from what we are to what we've done and what we've experienced, and particularly looking at how location has started to change the way we consider what we deliver and who we are, and some of the areas of PropTech that are also complementing locational understanding into these experienced changeable outputs. So the first area is on our core, our teams, our own FM teams, and the ability to deliver what we do, and getting into the e-services that was spoken about earlier on. The knowledge of, I guess, not only where the delivery team is currently located in and of themselves, but also where the need is within either an array of buildings or even within a given piece of real estate. Then within their systems, we're able to obviously connect the need to the solution, and that's not only brings efficiencies and timeliness in terms of being able to resolve that need, but also the adaptability and the layers of service that then can be delivered in this type of platform enables us to offer more services, new services, fresher services, and that ability to that has to come really from that ability to locate. So we might be leveraging things like artificial intelligence to make some of the decisions, but it needs that locational information to basically have that as part of the solution set. So in that regard, I've seen certainly complete changes to the end customer experience in terms of the FM service, and also, as I say, this ability to go into new services, more creative sometimes, is definitely had a very, I guess, an evolution and an efficiency drive from the traditional model. That was very much looking at the FM team, but as we start to look at the consumers and the users of our places and our spaces, the ability for not only the individual to come into a space and that space recognize they're there, but also recognize what they're wanting from this space allows that particular location to provide a digital wraparound to best reflect the changeable needs from all of us. So this I guess, when we come to this new world that we're in now, and there's hybrid working and a lot of home working in that hybrid state, then the compelling reason for you to come into the office has to be more than what you can simply get from your own home, and the ability for the building to leverage the location and to then shape that location based on your working needs is certainly one of the things that we've already been able to start to deliver. And with this new hybrid state, it's without a shadow of a doubt become far bigger focus for our clients. And that really is a little bit about that rather than an evolution, there's probably a bit of a reimagining of exactly how the space can be consumed. We had again with Simeon a note on whole life, and I think there is without a doubt, in terms of the understanding of your entire end-to-end need, if you can get that in a context and correlated across your whole estate and portfolio, then within the data there will be clear connections and optimizations that can deliver on sustainability in ways that don't actually change what you do. It just makes you more effective and more concise in the actions and the decisions that you make. So having that data architecture mapped out, created correctly will, without a doubt, again, within that locational understanding, allow the systems to connect and see these kind of golden threads, if you like, of sustainable optimization that, simply put, without the data, and even, to be honest, with the data, it's a very difficult thing for you know, a human mind to deal with that volume. The accessibility and inclusiveness, I've also seen we're able to bring about more targeted experience. We're able to, in some instances, bring entire digital layers of functionality based on a given user's own, again, need, but being able to then, you know, wrap that around the particular location they're in. So maybe some examples we've seen an entire kind of audio digital layer to a facility that worked with the visually impaired and was able to be consumed through, you know, a smartphone application. So all of a sudden the whole built environment can bring a different way to experience and consume it based on that locational understanding of the end user, and again their tailored specific need, which just makes our places and spaces again able to really work with everyone, no matter who you are and what challenges or not you may have with the space, just to bring that wraparound. And I guess, and again, then we've seen the ability to then start working with more of the heavier process and things like quantum computing and artificial intelligence, which, when we've got that architectural knowledge in terms of our kind of ontologies, irrespective of the various tools that may be powering that ontology, we can leverage some of these more emerging processing techniques to come up with, you know, really, really rich and nurturing understandings for how to better the place and the space and the activity you happen to be doing in that environment, to ways that I think in quite once we have this installed and implemented in our environments, it will completely change the way we consider our very kind of lives in our environments, and it will bring functionalities and complements in very inspiring ways, I would suggest. And we've already seen some of the abilities to really pull together teams. The building is genuinely knowing where you are, what's going on, who's connected. It knows the kind of, it sometimes sounds a little scary, I guess, but it's all about nurturing and really bringing out an enhanced experience to you. And what I would say is, in our smart buildings and in our smart estates, we've got all this emerging amazing PropTech, but location awareness within all of that is very much one of those building senses. For it to compute and to apply the best value outcome to your time in it, it very much needs to know where you are and also where it is in relation to all of that. So that's hopefully a nice sort of walk through some of what we do and some of what we've done, and I guess the opportunities to start to reimagine some and possibly all models that are out there. So I would like to hand over now to Falk, and he's going to take you through his presentation. Thank you all.
That's great, thank you. I think I'm sharing the wrong screen there.
We can see the presentation in full.
Can you? Okay, good. Okay, so my name is Falk Lyle.
It's gone now, I'm afraid. You had it up, I think you've maybe closed it. We'll just try it again, 1 second.
No.
Bear with me, it'll be with you in a second.
So,
Perfect.
okay, so let me start again. Falk Bio, I'm joining here from Utopia. I'm one of the co-founders at Utopia and the CTO there. Utopia is a very young business, and I bow to the experience and the scale of businesses that have gone before us. Here, in this case, we're a small business with about 15 staff. At the moment, we offer a variety of services, both in terms of digital infrastructure consultancy, on the one hand, PropTech and software as a service provision. And our focus is really on managed residential accommodation. And what I want to do today is share a view really on location data within that particular type of building or asset. So we worked with, and this is really here as a case study, we worked with one of our clients who operates a large build-to-rent building with a number of public amenity spaces and a large number of residential apartments within that building. And they wanted to gain insight into their public amenity spaces, how they were being used, and then take that information to optimize their operation, to optimize the use of that particular space, and gain insights for future developments, and actually drive the investment cycle and the design of future developments in that way. So it's really interesting, because what you have is you have a cycle there that's developing from designing a building, operating a building, gaining data from it, and then using that data to actually optimize either that same building, potentially at some point, but also taking that insight for future operations. The whole point here is to actually manage the asset, the building, and not necessarily people. That was the objective, to gain information on an anonymous basis, and to get snapshot time, real-time data on the one hand, that would be used in dashboard format, that would be used for compliance purposes, so maximum occupancy of various spaces, for instance, and also situational awareness, so if there are spaces that all of a sudden show as occupied, which shouldn't be, or overcrowding. At the same time, the data set that would be achieved would also provide longitudinal data and trends, or analysis of trends, being able to see the efficiency of space use, look at trends over days, weeks, months, seasons, and years, and then see what impact a building occupancy has. So if it's a new asset, for instance, and people move into it, you will see over time that the higher the occupancy rate is within the building, that clearly utilization of these amenity spaces also changes. And then the really interesting thing is to see, if there are any changes in behavior over time. So, for instance, is there more or less gym attendance? And that may be down to a variety of factors, but it gives an indication as to areas that warrant further investigation. The question then often is, if you see two different data sets moving in the same direction or in opposite directions, is there just coincidental correlation, or is there potential causation, so that one thing actually has a direct impact or effect on another? And basically, by having this kind of data, you're able to actually investigate those things further. And then that can be combined potentially with residents' surveys also, to find out perhaps some of the reasoning behind certain things. And thirdly, really in this, there was also a desire to have some operational integration into workflow and ticketing, and specifically also cleaning. And again, cleaning and the awareness and the sensitivity to cleaning, especially around COVID at the moment, is clearly high on the agenda. So we looked at a variety of different location data options, and you know, the options are literally plentiful, and each of them comes with, you know, some benefits and drawbacks and some considerations. So in the building, you know, there is extensive Wi-Fi provision, and it's possible to extract, you know, location data from a Wi-Fi infrastructure. The challenge really in the environment that we're looking at is that it's not precise enough, because it gives you a proximity, but it doesn't give you a precise location. It can track locations and paths and help create heat maps, but the other thing is that it cannot do is it cannot actually count people or track people as far as this is concerned, but devices. So if you have people walking around with more than one Wi-Fi enabled device, or have their Wi-Fi switched off or whatever, then basically Wi-Fi will be limited in its applicability. And as a consideration, and this is a recurring theme really, it's the whole GDPR and data privacy point. Bluetooth as a technology is another one which gives you more precise location capabilities, but again, what you do is you actually measure devices rather than people. But it can be used, for instance, for wayfinding within buildings and so on. GPS, especially in these large residential environments, just simply isn't an option because it's not reliable enough, being able to see you know, sufficient satellites you know, to actually lock and track locations in buildings. We looked at access control systems, you know, where people swipe in, swipe out, either with a key card or with a mobile phone or something like that. In order for that to be precise, really what you need to do is you need to make sure that people do swipe in and swipe out of spaces. So in the same way that you do when you're on the London Underground and you use the turnstiles and you use your credit card or a smartphone or so as a ticket, in the same way, you know, you would need to do that with access control. And that level of compliance is difficult, if not impossible, to achieve. And also, you know, the fact that, you know, if you have half a dozen people going into a space, that one doesn't open the door for everybody else, and then people just walk through. So we found that particular type of, you know, looking at, you know, location data in terms of people in spaces as not being reliable and precise enough. Beam break sensors, so those are the infrared sensors that you walk through. They can be directional, which is good, but they need choke points, you know, where these devices can be deployed. They're easy to deploy and quite cost effective, and you know, on the other hand, they count anything that breaks that beam. So you know, and also if you have two people walking in the same direction or in opposite directions, beam breakers won't be able to count those properly. We then looked at overhead counting devices, so 3D CCTV cameras or similar, which are then deployed at defined entry and exit points. And these devices do some intelligent edge processing, so processing video on the camera itself and then sending event data. These are fairly costly and they require network and power. So PoE is really or power over Ethernet is the technology that is typically used for that. I'll cover this a little bit later. We actually use the stereoscopic, so overhead 3D cameras, which have been proven to be very effective for us. CCTV video analytics is used primarily in retail spaces, you know, that can provide a high level of accuracy and see hotspots in the building. The problem is that basically the area that you want to analyze needs to be covered by CCTV. Again, CCTV image analysis is typically done and that is typically not done on the camera, but by centralized systems. There are other overhead sensors, and in fact, there's a fellow Scottish company, Behringer, who have developed a device in that space, which provides significant benefits and capabilities there. In that case, you don't need to have entry and exit points, but you can actually heat map a particular geography, which is very interesting. If you want to cover a large or complex topology, that may become difficult and expensive to do. And then at the most basic point, you have passive infrared sensors that just basically give you a binary. Is the space occupied or not? It will not tell you how many people are involved in that or where they actually are. So we looked at all these technologies based on, what are the objectives of the client, what's the cost, what's the retrofit capability, you want to count people or devices, what's the size and the shape of the building, what level of precision is it you're actually looking for, do you need location or do you need tracking and movement capability, and then also the all-present data privacy considerations. So to take this as an example, so this is a building that has a roof terrace on one building block right here with a football pitch and a stairwell from the floors below. And then you have this as the main public amenity space on the right, with a gym at the top, a lounge area in yellow there, a cinema room in purple, a blue marked private dining area, and a library. And our client wanted to understand really what the utilization of that space was like. So what we decided on as a solution was to deploy stereoscopic CCTV cameras at the locations highlighted in red. These are the entry and exit points between the various spaces that we want to cover. Because this was a retrofit and it wasn't possible to get power over Ethernet and network connectivity to this particular location, we actually used a beam break counter based on LoRaWAN IoT technology. And we also deployed some PIR sensors in bathrooms just to measure and report on occupancy. This was a full retrofit. It's a fairly complex technology with multiple entry and exit points, some of them nested and some of them interdependent. We've developed our own software platform that effectively takes the event data from multiple disparate devices and then models that particular entry and exit scenario. It does it in real time, provides historic data, and is anonymous. As part of this, just to make it clear, the CCTV cameras, they have some modified firmware on them that allow us to extract event data directly from the camera without having to go via some network video system or anything like that. So effectively, we just need the cameras on site, and we don't need any other hardware. So just to give an idea of some of the outcomes that have come with this, by being able to look at longitudinal data, and the top graph really shows this, you can see the gym being opened again following the easing of COVID-19 restrictions at that point, and you can see an immediate increase in traffic at that particular site. You can see usage patterns across the day and also going forward into weeks, months, and years. And what it also does is it gives you the opportunity to check against maximum occupancy, and that is again from a compliance point of view, and also from from an analytics point of view. What became really interesting here is that pre-COVID, the gym use, was from 4 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock the following morning. So it was effectively a 24/7 operation. The gym was open, during the whole time, and basically those timescales have changed a little bit since then. This data is also being used, to drive cleaning regimes, and the trends indicate data that can be used for planning. So for instance, the gym has never over that period of time reached its maximum occupancy. And at the time that we looked at this, the building was still being occupied, so occupancy rates were going up. Our client is looking to see at which point they may want to increase the space or modify the space to accommodate its residents. And basically, this kind of data then gives us the opportunity to actually start looking for this correlation to causation link. So one thing we discovered, for instance, was that there was a space which was empty or emptying at certain times of day, and it wasn't happening every day. But because we had overlay environmental data, for the same time frame for the same space, we came to the conclusion that solar again actually caused some overheating in the space, and people just didn't bother going anymore. That then was rectified through adjustment in the HVAC settings. And so this really is effectively a brief description of one real-life case of using location data in a particular use case and market segment, to the benefit both of residents on the one hand, and also to the building owner and operator on the other. So, for instance, some of the occupancy data can be made available to residents on dashboards or smartphone apps, so that they can see in real time whether the gym is busy or not, whether other amenity spaces are open or available or not. And that's it. And I'm looking forward to any questions you may have at a later point. But now I want to hand over to Simon from Urban Tide. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Volk. That's great. Morning, everybody. Right, I'm just going to share my screen. Not sure if that's worked or not. Can you stop blank screen?
At the moment, yeah.
Single white screen. Okay. Right, we'll stop sharing and try again. Worked earlier, didn't it? So just bear with me a second, everybody.
That's it now. Perfect.
Perfect. Great. Morning, everybody. So thanks for bearing with me while I've got the slides working. So yeah, just a quick introduction to myself. So I'm Simon Tricker, I'm co-founder of Urban Tide, and I'm just going to give you a quick overview of our organization, Urban Tide, really around our mission, and also introduce you to USmart, which is our AI innovation platform. And then we've got some really interesting use cases in this space. So I'll just crack on through those now. So our mission is it's a big mission statement, is to make a sustainable world with AI. So that's easily said and hard to do, but it's really a really important mission statement for us, because I think that's the key challenge of our time, is to how do we unlock sustainability and really kind of bake that in across a whole host of industries. And we really see AI and the use of data as a really kind of key driver to enable that to happen. The key problem that we really see at the moment, especially around the data space, is that loads of this data is just not ready for AI. And it's just basically, it's unstructured, it's locked in silos, it's hard to get hold of, it's difficult to use. And that's really the problem that we're trying to help organizations to change and to address. Now, we've got lots of experience in this space. Stevie and myself, who are co-founded, we worked together on the Future City Glasgow project. Now, this is going back to 2012, so it's almost 10 years ago now we worked on that. But there we really focused on how do we help the organization and their partners to unlock data from across all their different siloed services and their different departments, and try and bring that together and then utilize data-driven insights. So that was really the catalyst for forming Urban Tide, and We formed in 2014, and really to kind of build a movement around unlocking data. So that's obviously the key component to enable AI, is you need to get access to that data. So we're big advocates of open data. So trying to help organizations to open up and share as much data as they can. Now, obviously not all data can be shared for a whole host of reasons. So when it can't be, then it should be locked securely, but it still can be used to develop AI solutions. And then the next piece of the puzzle is really around developing AI solutions and really developing AI for good. So being transparent about what it's being developed for and how it's being used. And to enable that to happen, we built USmart, which is our AI innovation platform, with the concept of trying to build out a number of solutions that can really scale globally. So we don't want to kind of keep reinventing the wheel as we go and try and deliver against this mission of a sustainable world. So the base layer is our platform as a service. So this effectively enables us to integrate any data from any source. We don't care. Good, bad, and ugly data can come in, real time, static, historic. Yeah, just get it in somewhere, then we can start to develop solutions on top of it. The next layer then is into the data science. So we offer that as a service. So we effectively work with organizations to identify the key problems they're looking to solve. And then ultimately, if we do a good job on that and build out some good AI technology, there should be some potential to then scale those AI as a service modules. And we've got a number of modules in this, a growing portfolio effectively of AI solutions. And I'll go through a couple of those later. Now, to deliver against the goal of a sustainability world, it was important that we didn't silo ourselves. So we work across sectors. So we started in the smart city space, and what we've kind of discovered over the last 10 years of really building out solutions in that area is it's very much about crossing over into these different areas. So we kind of go deep into transport and helping organizations to link data to provide sort of single source of truth around how infrastructure is moving, how transport is moving, and especially into active travel. We're kind of helping Cycling Scotland to benchmark all of their active travel data across the whole of Scotland and opening that data up as well, which is really exciting. The other space we operate in is in the energy space. So the energy space is going through a massive transformation. Loads and loads of data is starting to be unlocked and starting to be shared and starting to really kind of understand the digitization of assets and how new services can be built on that. So we do a lot of work in that space, and I've got a case study on that later. And then also in that kind of leads on nicely into the IoT and housing and built environment space. So again, kind of work with organizations to link data sets across those areas. So I've got a couple of case studies now, so I'll just dive into those. So this is a real world example that we're working with at the moment for the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. And their challenge that they're trying to help to resolve is to identify buildings that have potentially defective or dangerous cladding. So, so we obviously all know about the Grenfell disaster and others that have kind of preceded, have happened since then as well, with some of the defective cladding on buildings. Now, as an agency, Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, they understand where all the 18-metre plus buildings are across the whole of England, but they don't know where the buildings are for 11 to 18-metre buildings, because there's obviously thousands of them. So how do they go about doing that? So they've got a number of programs, number of work programs to try and help to resolve that. And we're working on the AI machine learning solution of that. So it's a complex project, but ultimately it's to help them to roll out some of their support packages to help to alleviate the issue of these defective cladding on certain buildings. So big challenges. So locating all of the 11 to 18-metre buildings across the whole of England. So we had to bring together a number of different data sets to resolve that, and I'll go into those in a little bit more detail on the next slide. It's also around assessing and categorizing the facade types. So obviously buildings have lots of different types of facades and different makeups and different amounts. So how can we build solutions, build machine learning tools to assess those? And then ultimately it's around triaging. So how do we triage the buildings, the ones that have potentially the most effective cladding over the ones that are perfectly safe? And then that will be used then to roll out the support packages. So the solution was, it's been a long program because it's a complex challenge, but effectively we're linking together open and paid for data sets. So on the open side, we're using Ordnance Survey data for identification of the building heights and building locations. But we are finding that location height data is not completely 100% true, because we're looking for such a specific height range, 11 to 18 meters. There is a bit of discrepancy in there. So we're developing solutions that help to effectively count the windows of the buildings that we look at to verify the height data, or to give a better accurate understanding of the amount of floors that are on those buildings. So that's really where we're kind of using machine learning to help to solve that problem. And then the other piece then is around identifying and automating that process. So we worked with OFR, who are fire risk consultants, and actually it was Construction Scotland Innovation Centre who helped us to identify OFR to become part of our solution for the Ministry of Housing, Communities, Local Government. So thanks for that. And they really helped us to, one, understand the different types of facades, and then two, help us to train the algorithms and to build up effectively the knowledge base so that we can teach the algorithms to look at different types of buildings. Obviously that's an ongoing process because it's training data is just never ending, but we've got a good kind of base that we're building up now. And then the visualization that you see there is effectively the kind of front end. So there'll be a raw data set, obviously, that will be can be looked through in USmart. And then we've also got a front end, which is a map interface that allows you to effectively sift through the buildings that are potentially of higher risk, and then to go in and verify and look at those buildings using Google Street View. So it's a really exciting project, and yeah, good to see it starting to take shape now. The next case study I just want to get into is around, it's called USmart Zero. Now this is a really interesting project, and it's trying to identify fuel poor households. So now there's a number of challenges that we're trying to overcome, but effectively what we're trying to do is find fuel poor households and then help them to have solutions, remediation solutions that will hopefully improve that position. So is that insulation, or is it a different energy tariff, or what are there's a number of there's a whole host of interventions that can be deployed. Once those interventions have been deployed, we then want to help to track and see whether there has been some impact. Now, we're working with a number of partners on this, so I'll get into those in a second, but effectively the key challenges are, and this is a massive one, so homes account for 20% of our CO2. So if we're going to hit our targets, we effectively over the next 10, 15 years have to retrofit 29 million homes. So that's massive task, but it has to be done. There isn't really a choice if we're going to hit our targets. So energy suppliers, local authorities currently spend an absolute fortune trying to identify the households that need that help first. So what we're hoping to do is to use a data-driven approach, a machine learning approach, to help to do a better job of that identification, and then ultimately intervention, and then assessing the impact. And we should, try and reduce this fuel poor issue. So there are already 2.4 million households, and that's only gone up with the COVID situation as well. So a massive amount of people need help. So how are we going to do it? So we're unlocking smart meter system data. So this is the kind of unique piece of the approach. So it's using the system data. So we don't know how much people have topped up. We know when they've topped up, and we know some of the patterns around their kind of credit thresholds. So we're using that data and it's anonymized, so we're up at a very high level. So we're not down at a household, we're up at a super output layer. And then we're linking that with other data sources as well, and then obviously developing machine learning tools to dive in and try and extract and to find patterns within the data, within that data. And ultimately, at this stage, it's around identification and then as we've identified them, we can then put in interventions and ultimately reduce some of the, help to reduce some of the net zero or achieve the net zero targets. So just a little detail on some of the partners we're working with. So DCC, so they're the communication layer that all of the smart meters across the UK are talking across, and we're effectively getting a feed of their system data. So as I said, we don't know how much energy is being consumed. We just know when there's certain triggers have been, certain triggers have happened. Now, as you can see, some of the stats there. There's 30 million homes are the target. There's 10 million in at the moment. There's 140 different message variants that they collect. We're just taking a small sample of those. And just in last December, yeah, 335 million message variants were sent. So it's a big data set and should get some interesting insights from that. To help to develop the AI and the verification process, we're working with UCL and their Smart Energy Research Lab. Now they have consent down to household level for 10,000 participants. So we'll hopefully start to join up some of the data sets and see where we can find some linkages. Still early days, but good progress is being made on that one. And then ultimately our kind of customer is really the local authorities and energy companies. Local authorities in this case, and we're working with the Greater South East Energy Hub, and they work with 120 local authorities to help them deploy, identify and then deploy interventions. So and ultimately, yeah, the better interventions can then reduce costs and reduce emissions. So phase one, it's a two-phase program. Phase one is really, we're on feasibility study, so we're in the identification phase, so developing the AI identification, development of models, looking at the data that we've acquired for this phase and beyond, the ethics around it, GDPR, and all of the various concerns around that. A lot of stakeholder engagement, and then a lot of starting to build out a framework for the benefits and evaluation of the ultimate solutions. And we've got a broad advisory board as well that kind of supporting us, so from BEIS, ODI, and the Committee on Fuel Poverty, as well as Climate Change Committee as well. So yeah, a whole host of different bodies supporting us. So just to kind of recap a little from those case studies, effectively the way we work is we want to build a growing portfolio. So we work across sectors, so we bring in any data from any source, then look at how we can share that data. So can it be shared openly? Is it closed data? Then how are we going to process it? What's the solution that's trying to be developed? And then into analyzing, so developing tools to analyze that data, look at the insights we want to create, and then ultimately share that. So sometimes that can be shared as an open data set, it can be anonymized to that level. Sometimes it's shared as a dashboard or as raw data via API. And then a little bit how we kind of work with a lot of organizations, work across sectors, is really this discovery phase. So we help organizations to understand more around their data. So what's the mindset within the organization around how they use data? How's the access to that data? How easy is it to get access? What can be shared? What needs to be anonymized? How good is the quality of that data? How often is it updated? We like real-time data ultimately, but obviously not all data can be provided in real time. So it's really looking at understanding the quality, as well as the capabilities within the organization. So we do a lot of training, helping organizations to understand their own capabilities and where they want to go as we start to share more data over the coming years. And then also super important is obviously around the ethics. So how do we make sure we're developing ethical tools and not just developing black boxes that nobody understands what's going on within them. So yeah, just sort of recap really the way we work with a lot of organizations is really around smart data partnerships. So we look at the data discovery workshop, which then leads on to data prioritization and potentially AI pilots, or linking with one of our existing AI portfolio solutions. And to make it easier because we work a lot with public sector organizations, we're on a number of frameworks from the Crown Commercial Services. So they've got a couple that are very related to this space. So we've got an AI framework, as well as another IoT AI framework called Spark. We're on both of those to make it a little bit easier for organizations. Great, so there's my contact details. So if you want to get in touch, please do, and let's make a sustainable world with AI together. And I'll hand back to Fiona now, and we'll get stuck into some questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much to all of our speakers today. Much appreciated. If I could just ask all our presenters and the rest of the steering group organisations to join the call by way of camera and microphone, that would be ideal. And we will just kickstart our question and answer session with the panel. So thank you to everyone who's sent through questions so far. And just to get started in that capacity, I'll just put some questions out to everybody. So please do pick up based on your expertise and experience. One of the first ones I'd like to ask here, what are the sustainability benefits of PropTech? Anyone would like to answer?
Many.
Many. Gordon, please feel free to build on that.
I think, you know, it's able to penetrate so many layers of what goes on in our built environment. And, you know, through, I think, every presentation today, you can see different permutations of the data that it's going to surface to us. So I think it's not only enabling us to go deeper, but the context and how to really support that transformation in an informed capacity. It's very much giving, I guess, the strategic layer eyes and ears for what that sustainable net zero looks like, not just the race to net zero, but how do you evolve it into this thing that once we get there, we stay there and it's cost effective, etc., etc. So in my perspective, I think it enables us to evolve every part of that sustainable, you know, agenda.
Ideal. That's great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
maybe I'll
Anything
just
else
jump
to add,
in.
Simeon?
And
Yeah,
just to double
maybe I can
down,
just jump in.
sorry, I
Sorry,
think there is
Simeon,
yeah, it's, I don't know, it was Simon or Simeon.
Simeon.
Just to double down of what Gordon was saying. Of course, there are all those PropTech technologies that they can optimize the performance of buildings, but there is a specific area of PropTech that's also important, and that is the communication and engagement of occupants and users. And you cannot do anything regarding sustainability in the built environment without actually engaging the users. And I think PropTech is getting a lot there in engaging users.
Excellent, thank you. Simon, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, so I think one of the key challenges we see is the assessing the impact is quite a tricky one at the moment. So one of the pieces that we kind of talked about there around fuel poverty is often once the intervention has been put in, the way the impact is assessed is effectively, you know, a report is created, and then that's it. You know, years later, we kind of hope that we've moved them up an EPC rating. So it's how do we improve on the way we collect data in the longer term, not just the way we currently have always done it. I think that's a really kind of key challenge. Otherwise, we may just end up sort of ticking boxes thinking that we've done it, but we haven't actually really kind of moved the needle.
Okay, no, that's interesting, thank you. Just moving on to the next question, one from the our guest here today. Where do you guys see the biggest opportunity when it comes to using location data to deliver services across the construction and facilities management sectors? Gordon, that might be one for you to kick off.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, it's in handling this new world of ours, the locational insight is one way to keep our places safe while still trying to be effective as they, as we've always had in the past from our environments. So to me, unfortunately, it's a clear, easy case of pandemic handling and keeping our environments locationally orientated, intelligent, informed, and traceable.
Excellent, thank you. Any other comments from the panel?
Yeah, I think when it comes to efficiency, being able, you can only manage what you can measure. Okay, that's the first thing, and you can only manage things. Well, there are different ways of managing things. It can be done, manually potentially or automatically. And if you manage to combine, near real-time or real-time measurement with near real-time or real-time control, that is when you can have a proper impact. If you have large time delays, and interesting, Simon, when you were talking about energy data, for instance, if you get energy data only once a month or once a quarter or something like that, you cannot affect, what has gone before. You get data that basically says, oh, you could have done better here, and that's wonderful. But it's much, much better to have information in real time or near real time, so that when you do see something by way of an outlier or so, that you can then act immediately and then affect change in a positive way. And that, to me, is where PropTech really comes in. It gives you the opportunity to measure in real time, to report in real time, and potentially also control in real time.
Excellent, thank you. Simon, did you have something that you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I was about to say that for me, the biggest opportunity is not yet known because regarding the digitalization process, our whole industry is just in transition. And we don't know if that transition period will ever end because the technological evolutions are constant and continuous. So there is maybe in the future, tomorrow or in 1 year or 2 years, a challenge or a new opportunity, and somebody is going to deliver on that, and that's going to be the biggest opportunity.
Okay, excellent. I like it. Thank you. Jennifer, this might be one for yourself actually. What overseas countries do you see are best adopting location data for the purposes of the property market?
Well, recently I've been hearing that Finland is very, very connected. In fact, I think it was Gordon that kind of highlighted that to me. So they seem to be very connected with private and public sector. So we're looking into that further to see some good examples there. Another country that's been highlighted to me is Bulgaria. So DIT will be connecting up with me that to tell me a bit more about that country as well. So that's 2 areas that I'll be looking into. But does anybody else have any other experience from any other countries on the panel?
Probably the 2 most obvious ones in terms of identified opportunities for growth. So no, that's helpful, thank you. Tracy, this might be one for yourself actually. What are the top tips when it comes to writing funding application proposals?
Okay, so I sit within Scottish Enterprise and I support companies looking for partnerships, international partnerships, and who are trying to access innovation funding. So we see lots of applications from different companies. I would say in terms of top tips, the good applications that we see, it sounds so simple, but it's the school exam question. Make sure you're answering the question that's been asked of you. It's so easy to get into the narrative and go for it and tell everything, the assessors, everything you know about your project, etc. But they might not be asking about everything. That specific question's asking for a specific answer. I'd also say if you are making claims, then make sure that your claims are substantiated, quantified and referenced. And overall, I talk about the 3 H's, so describe the horror story. So what's wrong with the state of the art, which helps you come in as the hero to explain what you've got that's beyond the state of the art and is good. And then the happy ever after, what are the benefits that your solution will give you in terms of your company, in terms of societal benefits. So that's a few.
Excellent. No, that's helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Just in the interest of time, I think actually I've got some questions we didn't get to, but we will follow up and make sure we offer some sense of a response to those. I'll also be following up with the presentations just to make sure that you have a bit of a signpost towards becoming part of the Location Data Scotland network, in addition to support and networks that are available through SDI and EEN. So we'll have that all content and links provided to you as a matter of follow-up. And I guess at this stage it's really just for me to say thank you to the audience for joining us, for all the questions that you sent to us, and indeed for the panel for sharing their thoughts and initial insightful discussions. Your feedback will be used to plan future events and initiatives, so please do complete the feedback form that you'll receive after the event, and you'll see those links provided in the chat function already. And I guess just from my point of view, I'm just really grateful for everyone that took the time out of their day to support us and instigating this conversation around two very important themes that not only support the digital transformation but all the sustainability opportunities for us as a built environment and indeed as a country. So thank you very much for everyone's time. Sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but I hope you have a great day and thank you again for joining us. Take care.